Okay, hello everyone, and welcome back for another video in the series that I have started about the Fountain Tarot. Hello. Okay, so right now we are exploring just the court cards within each suit, and then we will kind of move on to the other parts of the deck. But please watch my intro video before starting to watch these, just so you kind of understand the premise of what the series is about. Today we are going to be talking about the Suit of Cups. Okay, so the cups represent the area of emotion, and they are also represented by the element of water. So the first thing that you can really see within both the Fountain Tarot and the traditional Rider-Waite deck, this is the Golden Universal Tarot, so it is slightly adjusted, but it's basically very similar to the traditional Rider-Waite. The first thing you can see through all of the cards is the presence of water. However, in the traditional deck, it's not as obvious, right? Like, water is present, but you do have to kind of look for it before you really start to see. It's one of those little symbols that you kind of, after you start reading the cards for a while, you know to look for it, but it's not going to be the forefront. The forefront of the image is really the people. And just to go on a slight tangent, I really think that that's why when people start learning tarot, they find the court cards to be difficult to interpret, because they really are just a single character, in kind of one pose, and they can be just hard to understand when you have, 12 different cards that all kind of look similar. So that's why we're going to try to understand them in a new way by using a different deck and a new interpretation. So I kind of see the Fountain Tarot as a modern example. So the people feel a little more realistic. They seem like people you would actually see out in your real life. So I thought it would be really fun to kind of build a narrative and tell a story about who these people really are. So this family, for all intents and purposes, we're going to kind of look at today. When I look at these cards together, I really do see like a family dynamic, where they all kind of have one story to tell. So here we see four people who, like, to me look very young. Okay, so in the Fountain Tarot, I just finished doing the video for the Suit of Coins, and they had a vast age range, right? There was a young child, the father was, or king, was very old, so you kind of saw like different stages of life all being represented, while here youth seems to be kind of a theme across the board. So we have, the page looks very young, the knight feels to me more like a teenager rather than someone who's in college or in their 20s. The queen, especially, I hesitate to even call her the mother in this scenario. To me, she feels like an older sister, maybe an aunt or an older cousin. She doesn't feel as maternal as some of the other queens in the deck. And then the king is the only one that does actually look and seem kind of more like an adult. So he really is taking on his role as the head of the family. But to me, I'm seeing them as a modern, more traditional, like a modern sense of family, where maybe they are a non-traditional family, right? So I'm not seeing them as being the king and queen being married, but I think that for the story, the narrative that I'm telling, which is literally just my intuitive interpretation, basically it's just my imagination running wild. And what this does is it allows you to kind of develop the characters in any way that you want and learn something new about them. So when I look at these people, I really see a family that's been brought together by kind of unlikely circumstances, but it's because, but they're being bonded together by love. So, um, for the Suit of Cups, it's really all about emotions, and it's all about, how is the water element at play in each of their, lives in this snapshot in the card. So water, runs very deep, and it can bring in some very good positive emotions and also some very negative emotions. So you're really going to see that being expressed throughout um, these four cards, just different stages. The pages are always going to be the youngest and the most innocent, and you tend to kind of see that and interpret it through the color. So, just as with the coin suit, the page here is the lightest tone of the card. So, that can be interpreted as, you know, innocence, youth, naivete. It can also be seen as kind of purity and simplicity. So the page is really holding all of these kind of typical personality traits of someone who is kind of young and just very purely innocent, um, someone who hasn't really had deep emotional trauma, someone who maybe discovering their kind of depth of emotion for the first time. So this card is super interesting because he has like um, a box, and in it you can see kind of like a swirl and some darker colors, and then there's a cup. I don't really know where to hold this, so okay, I'll just put it here for now. You can see that there's a cup on top of this box that the child is kind of looking into. So this card is really about interpreting a situation or a person who is very young, is, you know, very innocent when it comes to understanding how the world works, understanding other people's emotions and dynamics, and really sees the best in people, loves them for who they are no matter what, and just really knows love. On the flip side, they may be prone to possibly getting hurt because they see the best in people. So the Page of Cups is just a very outward, expressive expression of emotion that is just very youthful and innocent. And a lot of that is also in the page in the traditional card. You can still see the lighter color. There's calm waters behind him. He's on land, so he's more grounded. The clothing he wears shows that he's kind of, you know, within good circumstances, kind of like, just in a very comfortable place, and he's kind of offering a cup to you, so the emotions are contained within the cup, and there's a fish coming out of it, so that in the traditional sense is about, surprise or news, good news, that's being offered to you, because it's something unexpected. It's an unexpected delight. um, the Fountain Tarot page is a little more introspective, but they both seem to be offering you something. And, for the sake of this narrative, I really am seeing it as, a child within a family who, like I said, has been kind of brought up in a quiet, very normal circumstances. So just living a normal life, has, a family around them who loves him. Potentially, because I said this was a non-traditional family, they were adopted. I think that we can kind of assume that from this kind of blank slate that maybe this child doesn't necessarily know where they came from, right? So it's a child who is thankful for the circumstances that they have, and maybe doesn't know about their own history, and that could be something that they have to work through eventually. You can kind of see that in the darkness within the box, that maybe there are secrets there, or some kind of trauma that they don't remember. But for right now, they're like kind of just in this state of calm, a state of like blessing, and they're just kind of discovering who they are. So I see this as a young kid going to school, like I said, is adopted, but feels loved, feels supported, is happy in the family that they're in right now. Okay, so moving on. We have the Knight of Cups. Okay, so the Knight of Cups is the older brother. Okay, and in this nuclear family. And here we're starting to see some darkness and light. So there's really a juxtaposition of darkness and light, right? And the way that the striations in the painting are, it almost looks like ice coming into play. So the night is where I'm really seeing some shadow, the idea of shadows coming into play. And then the cup is being balanced on his head. And that's a very precarious place to have the cup. And I think that that really says a lot about who this character is, and the kind of emotional state that they might be in. I'm really seeing him as a teenager. The knight, especially the Knight of Cups, is kind of known for this kind of being on the up and down, or on a roller coaster of emotions. So hitting those highs, but also hitting those lows. And that's very typical of someone who is a teenager and is kind of working through just the emotions of growing up. I'm seeing this person, this kind of older son, as a teenager who is feeling a little lost, a little out of place. I'm seeing him as kind of like maybe someone who's really into theater, or someone who is very into the arts, is into expression, but maybe feels like an outsider, maybe feels like a loner, maybe he doesn't have a lot of friends in school. He feels like he needs to kind of put these walls up, because other people don't understand him. He could potentially be gay and be in the closet. I feel like this is a card that definitely could represent the emotions that are associated with that: feeling isolated, feeling alone, feeling like you need to keep a secret from other people. Um, that is all at play in this card. There's kind of like some fog over his face, so the idea of like maybe putting a mask on and having to, balance his emotions and seem like he's okay, when in reality, this world that he's kind of playing this balancing act on is very fragile. Um, and and it really doesn't matter how loving and supporting a family is. These circumstances are hard no matter what, who your parents are and what your family is like. So even if his parents are very accepting of who he is, and who he wants to be, it doesn't really make that scenario any easier when you're living it. Especially as, let's say, a 17-year-old kid who's in high school. So I definitely see this knight as being someone who is very connected to the arts, very kind of just, you know, very expressive and likes to express themselves through writing, or painting, other art forms, theater, like I said before, singing, dancing, and but still does kind of feel like a little bit lonely, who is kind of at that point in his life where he feels like he needs to decide who he's going to be, and can I trust these people to show them my true self. um from body language, besides, okay, so we have the cup bouncing on his head, but then also the body language really shows needing to like protect oneself. So there's a lot in here that kind of is showing us that they're very emotionally vulnerable at this moment. In the traditional Rider Waite deck, a lot of those same kind of ideas do come into play with the card, but in kind of a more masculine way, I would say. So this card's more about, vacillating between the good and bad of emotion. So when the knight, um, in the traditional sense, is at its best, it's very romantic, loving, and most of its kind of personality traits are associated with being in love. So, being romantic, being passionate, being just kind of idealizing a situation. So idealism could also be a bad thing, but also kind of being a little immature. So if things go wrong and don't go in their favor, he can be immature. He can be, jealous. He can lack restraint and just kind of blow up. He tends to be hot and cold. So maybe he'll like love you one moment and the next moment just kind of disappear. So mood swings are also definitely a possibility with this card. So all of those are kind of the traditional meanings of what the Knight of Cups can be like, and the underlying theme is that he can be a little unpredictable. So he's definitely one that will offer you that cup of wine and then throw it in your face 2 seconds later. You don't really know what you're going to get with the Knight of Cups. Where here, I feel like that those feelings are still present, but way, way, way more internalized, and may just be more about expressing them within themselves, where they may feel like some self hatred, or just feel like kind of unhappy and maybe depressed, or have a mood swing, and then, or just, be then on the good side, be super passionate and fun and, very outwardly expressive, and you don't realize that on the inside there's all this turmoil going on. So that is kind of how I see the Knight of Cups, is the brooding teenager. Um, and to me, I'm kind of seeing as like the two kids are the child of the king, and then the queen is, like I said, like an older sibling maybe, or an aunt, some kind of maternal figure who has really stepped in to take care of them, but is not necessarily their biological mother, because she is very youthful. So let's move on to the queen, and this is what the point I'm trying to make about this being a modern interpretation. Just because she's not their biological mother does not take away from the fact that she is motherly in any way. So I think that this Queen of Cups still does represent the kind of all encompassing motherly energy, to a T, without, but it's almost kind of heightened even more because she's not a mother, so this was her choice, right? She chose to step in and take care of this family, even though they weren't necessarily her own to begin with. And just all of the burden that kind of is put onto a person who does decide to take something like this on. It's partially a choice, but there's also a lot of burdens that come with it. Just getting over the hurdles of bonding with a family and children who aren't your own, and still being young. Like, she still seems young to me, so just kind of, she's still growing up, essentially. Um, that's all kind of plays into it. So this Queen of Cups, I see her as being a, probably someone who, let's say, is in her late 20s, early 30s. Maybe she's an aunt, or perhaps she's even dating the king, and he has two children, and she just is kind of willing to accept this family, accept him and everything that comes with it. So she has tons of emotional depth going on here. So she does have, a lot, kind of, you can literally see like below the surface. She's halfway submerged in water. She's very kind of like almost lost in the photo. You don't see her very well. She's not very clearly defined, but she looks tranquil. She looks at peace. She's, she has her cup kind of in the water, but floating on top. So she's really kind of dipping into her own emotions in a way that she feels is safe and in a calm way. So I'm really seeing her as someone who I'm seeing her as someone who's really able to navigate the difficult world of um, not only her emotions but other people's as well. She provides calmness, tranquility, and stability to the other people around her, especially to the two males that are with her. So she is kind of that like guiding force of peacefulness. Um, and she is giving but always has more. I think that's another way of interpreting all of this water is that she's not emptying her cup for other people. So she's able to, kind of navigate her emotions and um, help and protect and care for the other people in her life without really disturbing the peaceful waters of her own existence, which is really, really hard to do. So that's by no means a small feat. In the traditional deck, the the queen does have a lot of similar traits to what I just described, but I don't think that they're that as apparent within the card. I think a lot of it just has to be kind of like implicitly known, learned, or intuitively learned through the card. You can see her kind of looking into the cup, so that means that she's very just at peace and with her emotions, and it can kind of look them in the face. And then she has a little bit of water behind her and on the ground near her, but it's not overwhelming her in any way. It's just that's just part of who she is. Um, the queen is known for being loving, tender-hearted, but also intuitive and very psychic. She is kind of the quintessential mother who is so caring, so loving, super compassionate, someone who you can tell anything to, someone who you can trust, to the ends of the earth, has her children and family's best interests at heart with whatever she's doing. Um, Another kind of idea is of unconditional acceptance and sensitivity to others. So, a lot of times when the Queen of Cups comes up in a traditional deck, it does have to do with someone who may be empathic or extremely sensitive to the emotions of others, or someone who is psychic or intuitive. And that just kind of comes with the idea of being so caring and open, having an open heart chakra to others, that you are kind of able to read them easily. You understand them without them having to explain themselves. You are really a person who is there for others, and you understand people without them really even having to explain anything to you, which is a very unique gift. It also they say that you could potentially be a natural medium, or just be spiritual in the sense that you're connected to the whole universe. Okay, I'm back. I had to take a brief break. So we're going to finish up by talking about the King of Cups. To me, in our modern family narrative, he feels like he is that, like, a kind of the single dad, and because of that, he has multiple roles to play. So he's playing that, you know, not only the fatherly patriarchal role in his family, but also he has to fill the maternal role, or he needed to, until the Queen of Cups, whether or not it's the aunt, or maybe it's a new girlfriend that he's dating, kind of comes in and steps in to help. For a long time, he's kind of had to fulfill both the female and male parent role. So, because of that, he is introspective. I feel like he is very cautious with decisions that he makes when it comes to his family, because he just knows that, he's doing a lot on his own. he is shaping his children's lives, in all of these ways, and he's doing it alone. I kind of see, to me, he kind of looks like a professor. He looks smart. He's like dressed well. He looks definitely like someone who thinks before he acts, but he is very aware of, the weight on his shoulders, and he's very well aware of the responsibility he has to his family. So I think that he maybe works in some kind of academic field, but I think he makes enough money to take care of his family. You can see from the pose that he is in this card, he is just like the King of Cups in the traditional deck, kind of looking down. He's thinking. He has, these kind of waves around him, and he's like within this kind of bubble. So I definitely think he's been through tough circumstances, which is also something that the in the traditional meanings of the cards can is often taught, that the King of Cups, he is more empathetic and sensitive to others because he's been through hardships himself, and he understands. He understands what it's like to, experience loss, maybe experience death. Maybe he is. Maybe he lost his wife. Maybe she passed away, or maybe he's divorced. But he is a man who has experienced significant emotional losses in his life, and he's able to kind of come out the other end and be more empathetic and sensitive and caring because of it. And I think that, these waves kind of show the emotional turmoil that has gone on in his past. You can see his one foot is extended kind of into the water, so you know that that is still a part of who he is, but he's able to kind of protect himself and, um, you know, still be a good person despite these things that have happened to him. Some traditional kind of words that are usually associated with the King of Cups. He's usually known to be wise, calm, diplomatic. So he's really good leader. He's good at, making people work in harmony and bringing people together. And I think that that's also a huge thing when we're thinking about this modern family, is the fact that he has brought all of these different people together under one roof, and they've become his family, even though maybe they're not all related by blood. So in this scenario, he's kind of playing out that role of a King of Cups, because he's kind of brought these people together and bonded them through emotions, and leads them as one family, even though, they all are from very different parts of the world, walks of life, whatever. It's kind of up to you to how you want to interpret, are these his children? Are they adopted? Is this his girlfriend? Is this, maybe just an older sibling or an aunt or whatever? That's kind of the fun in imagining these situations, is that it's never cut and dry. Because he also is very in touch with his feminine side, and he has kind of played the role of the mother as well. He is a natural healer. He is a mediator, so he can mediate situations between the kids, or whatever. He's he's kind of like their therapist at times, and he definitely is not one to punish his kids. He's more of a quiet influence, so he's stern, he can be strict, but I don't think that he really has issues with his kids disobeying him, because he has very open communication with them. I think he kind of understands what they need and who they are as people, and he knows how to discipline them best. So he would never be one to, argue or fight or, get violent with anyone, because he knows that the best way to kind of mediate situations is to let people kind of come to him, and then he will, you know, offer his advice and wisdom, whatever that may be. Um, And that comes partly from him being an academic. I think that comes partly from his life experiences. And I think that comes from maybe his spirituality. Maybe he does kind of know that. Um, I think he might just be the kind of person that's aware of the fact that he doesn't know everything. He probably does have a connection to his spiritual side, and that allows him to kind of just understand people on an emotional and higher level. He's also very patient, and he allows his children to express themselves freely. He knows that they're not a traditional, cookie cutter family. So he's not going to force his children to be normal, let's say. If his son decides to come out of the closet, then, that's okay with him, but he's not going to push him in either direction. If his youngest son wants to know about being adopted, he's not going to hide that secret from him. And he's going to be transparent about, let's say, if this is his new girlfriend who's in the family, he's not going to expect them to like call her mom or anything like that. It's just going to be, he's going to be very realistic about understanding that different people emotionally can accept different things, and he kind of works with that and mediates all of those situations. So I think that sometimes thinking about the kings as parental figures rather than like leaders of countries makes it a little bit easier to understand in your everyday life, because in reality, like a king, how many interactions do you really have with a king and how they make decisions. So if you kind of take that into a sphere where you can understand it, it will kind of give you a lot more nuances in understanding their personalities and how they would, just handle different situations in everyday life. If he comes up in a reading, and he may come up as someone's father figure, or he might be a boyfriend who is in a person's life who has family, has children or something like that. So these are really good ways of looking at the cards and understanding how these things work. Lastly, with the coin suit, I also connected it to astrology. This also, so basically, the cups go along with the element water, like I said before, and traditionally within astrology, that correlates with Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. Okay. So when I was kind of like looking at the cards and thinking about how they would, you know, how they would correlate, I really saw the page as the Pisces of the group, because there's that innocence about them. In the Page of Cups, I really see Pisces. And I think that that's because those three water signs are known for their kind of emotional depths. And let's say for Scorpio, for instance, they are kind of known for being on the darker side at times, when it comes to experiencing love and emotion and all of that. But Pisces, at least to me, I've always kind of seen them as having a very childlike side to them. They have this kind of like deep inner wisdom that it doesn't, they don't get bogged down by the things that they just kind of innately know and understand about the universe and other people. They just accept things as they are. And that's because at the end of the day, Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac. So it's believed that they really have already learned and have this innate wisdom about all of these signs because they've traveled through the entire cycle of the zodiac. So here we see that kind of childlike innocence, and there's a little bit of naivete that, Pisces can kind of come off as being airy fairy, a little flighty, or maybe you don't realize how emotionally intuitive that they actually are, because on the surface they don't let that all show. It's not really like the end all be all for them, and it's not the most important thing in life. For them, the most important thing in life is about connection. It's about understanding people and just that common just love in that common kind of way. Like finding a shared commonality, I guess, with other people. And they do kind of see the world through like these, they're like old souls, but they still see the world through more innocent eyes. So I really see Pisces in this card. Also in the traditional deck, there is a fish in it. So that's one way to remember it. And sometimes the Page of Cups is also called like the Cupid of the deck. So because it brings new love and this new like excitement to it. It's very romantic and it's sentimental, and those are all kind of things that sometimes Pisces are known for. Sometimes being over emotional or a little too sentimental, but I don't see that as necessarily a bad thing. So yeah. So if you ever use this card, you can sometimes think of the emotions that are associated with Pisces, or not emotions, you can think of the personality traits that are associated with Pisces, to go along with this card. The Knight of Cups, I saw definitely as Scorpio. I think that that translates both in this deck, the Fountain Tarot, and in the traditional deck, because of that idea of uh, I guess, duality and that black and white, and the idea of not only being one or the other, but also just constantly vacillating between the two, which is a huge, huge part of who the Knight of Cups is. So basically, having a personality trait, and either committing to it, all good or all bad, right? So let's say if you're romantic, and like Scorpios are known for their intensity. So they're not going to be just a little romantic. They're going to be so romantic that they're going to love you no matter what to death, or if something goes wrong, they're going to be overly emotional and jealous. And that idea of constant like flux and change, in the emotional space, that's really something that is a typical trait of Scorpios. They're constantly changing, constantly evolving, and they really can, when they have emotions that they feel, it'll manifest in either a light or a dark way. So the Knight is definitely Scorpio. You can think about other traits that are typically associated with Scorpio to go along with this card. And then once again, we have the King and Queen, and I really see them as kind of the dual nature of the third sign, which is Cancer. So Cancer is associated with the moon and the feminine and the divine feminine mother. So Queen of Cups kind of goes without saying that those two cards would really kind of get along. The idea of being very intuitive to other people's needs, being a caregiver, being someone who just is that maternal, caring person in every scenario, even when they're not actually a mom, still kind of filling that role of being that caregiver. That is a very typical sign or personality trait of Cancers. And then we have the King, who also fills that role where he, is more in tune with his sensitive side. He's very caring and loving, and he's a little bit more reserved, maybe more introverted. He's very in tune with his own emotions, even as a male, which can be a little bit harder to find. Cancers can be more emotional when they're men. And but both of them also, especially the King, it still have that kind of darker side, which isn't always the case with Cancer, but it can be with any of these signs, where just like in the cards, the water cards, if something doesn't go their way, or if they are experiencing some kind of darker emotion, it can manifest in a very turbulent, dark way. And you can see that both of them have this potential inside of them, where maybe they had dark things happen to them in the past. They've experienced loss or heartache or whatever, and they kind of are choosing to come out the other end and be okay. Okay, so I think we are now done with the cup suit when it comes to the court cards. I really hope that you guys enjoyed this. I hope that it has kind of taught you how to look at the court cards in a new and different way. So please check back to my next video because I will be doing the wand suit next.